Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, January 6th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Tyreek Hill situation. He walked off the field and now wants out of the Miami Dolphins organization. In this segment, we turn our attention to a broader view of the NFL, the final NFL power rankings, 32-1, coming up in just a second. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, January 6th. But like I was saying, getting into our final full NFL power rankings for the season, we have 32-1. Starting off at number 32, it's the Cleveland Browns. They finished the year just in a miserable state. A new starting quarterback to add to that jersey that keeps on growing now. Bailey Zappi takes a turn on the list, and it's gone just about as good as just about everyone else there. They hold on to everybody. Deshaun Watson suffered yet another setback on his Achilles injury. Probably a good thing. They're going to be in the market for a new quarterback, with the Cleveland Browns start off the final NFL power rankings at the bottom of the league at number 32. At 31, we have the New York Giants, right? This is a Giants team that has some promise to it, right? They have the rookies, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy. The offensive line needs a lot of work. They obviously need a quarterback, a couple of good defensive players, also young. Andrew Phillips. You have Tyler Nubin. Those two secondary pieces, obviously, that whole front four is pretty good in New York when healthy. This is just a team that did not get anything to click at all. And they're a lot of pieces away, but you can start to see a little bit of a vision with this team heading into next season. But for now, Giants need something quarterback pretty badly. They're at 31. At 30, we have the Tennessee Titans. The team that holds the number one overall pick in the NFL draft this year is at number 30. The Tennessee Titans go out there, and they just had a bad game. But again, like I've been saying all season, this is a Titans team that has some talent on its roster. This is not a talented roster that, if they get the right quarterback in there, is going to pull what Washington did. But honestly, they're not too far off, right? You have a couple of solid running backs. The offensive line isn't completely garbage. And when healthy, that defense was a top 10 defense in the league this year. Now, everything kind of went wrong with them because the quarterback situation just was not the right answer. And there's no getting around that. They need to get a new quarterback if they want to be any kind of successful heading into the future. But the Tennessee Titans are not the worst team in the league, regardless of having the number one overall pick. Number 29, we have the Saints. This is a team that is very, very dangerously bad, right? We've seen them be sort of competitive with Derek Carr at the helm, but right now what the Saints need to be is they need to be complete trash because they have way too little cap space to do anything to make themselves better. They don't have too many great draft picks. They need to hit on their draft picks. Otherwise, they're going to be bad for a very, very long time. And I'm worried we're about to hit a time in New Orleans football that is back before the Drew Brees era, when they were consistently one of the worst teams in football. I kind of see that on the horizon. They stressed out this competition window, this competitive window, a little bit too far, and now they're falling back into their habits of just being a bad team. The Saints are at 29. The Jags here at 28. I mean, again, I guess we're getting to around the territory of best of the worst, but this is still really, really bad. Really, any of these bottom 5 teams, bottom 6 teams in the NFL are just awful, right? The Jacksonville Jaguars, with Mac Jones at the helm, showed a little bit of promise, especially with rookie wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. This was not the season they were expecting. This is a failure of a year for them, but they do have a couple pieces to build around, and I look forward to see what they can do, hopefully with a healthy Trevor Lawrence going forward. At 27, we have the Raiders. Brock Bowers is amazing. The rest of this team, Not so much. We're here in this category of teams that desperately need a quarterback, right? Browns, Giants, Titans, Saints, Jaguars, Raiders, all of these teams desperately need quarterbacks. They are going to be in the market for a quarterback draft that really only has two, maybe three, one, in my opinion, first round options, real first round options. It's going to be a bloodbath, and I'm curious which one of these teams is going to shell out 45 to $50 million for a guy like Sam Darnold after what he did on the Vikings this year. Bears at 26, a huge win for them over the Packers, and this wasn't just one of those weird Week 18 wins where the other team was resting their starters. The Packers were trying in this game. This was their first win in 11 games against the Packers. Their first win, they snap a 10-game win streak, just straight up. The Bears needed that one badly. They get the 2025 year off to a good start, and hopefully that can reverse whatever curse was put upon them when they gave up that Hail Mary in Washington. I think Caleb Williams has the ability to be better. He had a rough season, but I think this is a Bears team that has a lot of talent and can continue to grow from what they had this year. At 25, we have the Patriots. Joe Milton looked really good. They fired Gerard Mayo. They have their quarterback of the future. They have a top 5 draft pick. This is exactly what they wanted. Not exactly. They obviously wanted that number 1 overall pick, but it doesn't matter as much to them because they already have their quarterback. In fact, they potentially have 2 quarterback options there. I'm curious what the conversation surrounding Joe Milton in the offseason is going to be. Maybe one of these 6 teams that we just went over would be interested in trading for him with his physical tools and his accuracy. That's a guy that might be on the trade market. Might not be too bad of an option for a team like potentially the Giants or the Jaguars that don't have one of those top 2 picks in the NFL draft that could use a quarterback. At 24, we have the Colts. Anthony Richardson and that whole season was just weird, right? Everything with this Colts team that could have gone wrong didn't really go wrong, but there were just bad vibes around this team all year long. Anthony Richardson could not quite figure it out, and with the way that the Colts benched him halfway through the year and the way that he was talked about, his leadership style not being super well received, not being super well liked in the locker room, I don't know if the Colts know what they're doing with him. And this is kind of a pivot point, right? He's been in the league for 2 years now. Granted, he's been injured for half of his time in the league. He's sat out of 16 of his 34 potential games that he could have played in. So he's only played 1 full season, and he's had his ups and downs, right? I've talked a lot about Anthony Richardson, how much I love his potential, but it's time to start really making those decisions, and I'm not sure if they're really going to go forward with him. It's going to be a really interesting offseason in Indianapolis. Carolina Panthers at 23, they found their guy. How about that? Bryce Young looking like that number 1 overall pick, Heisman winner. 5 total touchdowns for him in the final game in an incredible duel between them and the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, they end up ending their season on a high note, and this is a team that has a lot of momentum heading into 2025. They figured out their quarterback situation. They figured out their running back situation. They figured out their head coach situation. Now they just need to get some more pieces, especially defensively, and this is one of those teams that if they are smart in free agency, could make a huge leap in 2025. 22, we have the Cowboys, a team that has all the talent, right? You look up and down that roster, and the names that pop out to you on paper are just amazing. But this was a failure of a season by every possible metric, right? Injuries, wins, not making the playoffs. This was just a bad Cowboys year. They continue to sit around the 20s. They almost beat the Washington Commanders. They end up giving up a last-second touchdown to Marcus Mariota. This was just a bad year for them, and I don't really know what they're going to do going forward. Jets at 21, and the big question surrounding them is around Aaron Rodgers, right? Is he done? Has he played his last snap in the NFL? And if not, is he coming back to the Jets? Are the Jets done with him? He said that he'd like to play for the Jets if they would have him back, and that's something that the new head coach, new GM need to figure out. Whether or not keeping him is the right answer. Now, will he play somewhere else if the Jets decide ultimately not to keep him? I bet he will. I think he's got at least 1 more season left. He did sign that extension at the end of last season. I believe he's got 1 year left on that deal, so we'll see what happens. But Aaron Rodgers, I don't think is done. He just threw his 500th touchdown of his career, which is incredible. What he's done, don't let it get diluted by this last season and how atrocious it was. He's still going to be an undisputed first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game of football. But that's the big question surrounding the Jets in a sea of chaos right now. At 20, we have the Niners. Another quarterback question for them. What are they going to do with Brock Purdy, right? This San Francisco 49ers team had a season from hell, really, right? This is a team that dealt with every single injury under the sun, off the field issues, on the field issues, players quitting on them in the middle of games, running backs going back to that running back curse that Kyle Shanahan seems to put on all of his running backs, right? They went through 4 running backs this year. It's just going to be what I'm sure they'll reload, right? But they need to figure out what they're doing with Brock Purdy, because he's asking for 50 to 60 million. I don't know if he's really do that. Kyle Shanahan's been successful with just about every quarterback that he's laid his hands on. I wonder if they take another shot in the barrel at another late round quarterback, or potentially a veteran, a guy that kind of didn't work out, sort of like a Sam Darnold situation. We'll see though. Heading into the top 20, we have the Miami Dolphins. We talked a lot about Tyreek Hill earlier on in the program, so I'm not going to harp too much about him, but really the question is, what does the future look like in Miami, right? And that's a very broad question, but Tua, he clearly is the guy that they want, but how long is he going to play? Is he going to get hurt again? And what is your backup plan? They've been incredibly unable to deal with his Tua injury. They've only won 1 game with a backup quarterback in all of Mike McDaniel's tenure. They need to find an answer at backup quarterback, someone that they can trust in case Tua goes down yet again. This is a Dolphins team that is kind of in no man's land, in purgatory right now, and we will see. They can reload pretty easily, but they could also completely blow it up super easy. This is going to be a really interesting offseason, and they're one of those teams, like the Colts, that I'm going to have a strict eye on as we head down the stretch. Falcons at 18, they don't have too many questions, honestly. The biggest one is just, what are they going to do with Kirk Cousins? Are they going to let him go? Or are they going to keep him as an expensive mentor? But seemingly, Michael Penix has been the answer. Now they're 0-2 in the I guess 1-2 in the games that he started, 0-2 in his last 2 games, but he has led them to game-tying, game-winning drives in both of them, and has led to incredible quarterback duels versus Bryce Young and Jaden Daniels. He seems to be the answer. He's starting to get more on the same page with guys like Drake London. I think this is an Atlanta Falcons team that the sky is the limit for them as long as Penix is at quarterback. 17, we have the Cards. Again, this is just a team that's in the middle of a rebuild, right? They took a huge step up this year. That defense was incredible. I'd like to see a little bit more out of Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. They didn't quite have the best connection, but that'll get better. As long as that improves in the offseason, they're on the right track. At 16, it's the Houston Texans, the first playoff team on our list, and really one that's limping their way in. They get a big win at the end of the season against the Tennessee Titans to give them a little bit of momentum as they host another playoff game this year, but CJ Stroud has been going through a bit of a sophomore slump. Really, everything on this team has been down, and that offensive line is just atrocious, going up against a good Chargers pass rush, as we'll talk about later on in the week. It's going to be a little bit tough for them. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. Seahawks at 15, they are actually the first team out of the playoffs at 10-7. It was just a shame. They end up missing the postseason because of strength of record, strength of schedule, one of those tiebreakers that's kind of further down the list. Geno Smith hit all of incentives. I'm curious what that roster looks like, because there's some rumors surrounding Tyler Lockett, whether or not he comes back. We saw the emergence of JSN and kind of DK Metcalf taking a little bit of a back seat to some of those other receivers. I'm curious what's going to happen with Zach Charbonnet. He took a big step up, and Kenny Walker. Which one of those guys is going to have a bigger season next year? There's a lot of questions around the Seahawks, but I think they're going in the right direction, and I think they have a lot to look forward to next season. Steelers at 14, another playoff team here. The Steelers have been skidding as of late. They just have not had the answers. The offense has been really, really bad. The defense looked really good against a high-powered Bengals offense. They're able to hold them to just 19 points on the day, which is incredible, really. But this is just typical Pittsburgh Steelers, right? They get that winning record, they get into the playoffs, and now they have to play an opponent that is just honestly much better than them. They draw the Ravens this year, and it is a division game, so anything can happen. But I'm just not too excited. I don't really believe in this Pittsburgh Steelers team going forward. There's a lot of questions, especially at the quarterback position with this team. Bengals at 13. They were oh so close to scratching and clawing their way back into the playoffs. My big takeaway for this team is they need to fire Zach Taylor. I talked about it in our first segment. He continuously gets this team off to slow starts, and if they had just won one more game in the first 4 games of their season, they'd probably be in the playoffs right now. It'd be a much different story. We'd talking much differently about this team. Instead, they're going home, they're heading on vacation, and the Bengals are getting prepared for next season, where they need to figure out how to re-sign both of their star receivers and fix that defense. At 12, we have the Los Angeles Rams. They get themselves into the playoffs, and they're a very dangerous team right now. This is a team that started off 1-4, finished at 10-7, and that is incredibly impressive. Finishing at 9-3 down the stretch of the season, the Los Angeles Rams have a lot to play for. They're going for their second title in the last few years. I'm not sure if they can do it, but they're a very dangerous team if you let them get hot. Broncos at 11, they get a huge win. Bo Nix sets the rookie record for touchdown passes by a rookie quarterback, right? That is crazy. He's a guy that I honestly don't believe too much in. He reminds me of Mac Jones a little bit. His rookie season, he leads the Patriots with a legendary coach to the playoffs. Patriots lose in the first round. Then Mac Jones falls off a cliff. I don't know if it's going to be such a dramatic fall off for Bo Nix, but I'm getting a lot of the same kind of vibes between Bo Nix and Mac Jones. I'm just not too optimistic about the Broncos' future. Heading into the top 10, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I don't want to talk about their future right now. They're in the playoffs. I want to talk about what took place at the end of that game. One of the coolest things I have ever seen on a football field. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers needed Mike Evans to have just 5 more yards. They get the ball back with 30 seconds left, and instead of just taking a knee and claiming their playoff spot, they run a little 5-yard out. He ends up picking up 9 yards and securing his 11th straight, all 11 years of his career. 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, tying Jerry Rice, the first player in the history of the NFL to do it in his first 11 seasons. He's a future Hall of Famer, and I thought that was super cool for the Bucs to give him that shot, give him that extra play. Everybody knew it. Everyone in the stadium knew it. It was an excellent way to walk off the year. They head into the playoffs, a rematch of Week 1 when they took down Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. That's going to be a good game. At number 9, we have the Green Bay Packers. Christian Watson goes down for the year, torn ACL. Sucks because he is such a huge part of that offense. We talk about this Green Bay Packers team all the time. They struggle with some of the better teams. They just lost to the Bears for the first time in 11 games. This was not a good look for them. They were trying. Losing Christian Watson, though, I think is going to be a huge blow to this offense, right? You have a lot of different receivers, 5 or 6 guys that have made big contributions over the course of this year, but Christian Watson has been the big play guy. He's averaging 21.4 yards per reception that he's had, and he hasn't had his most explosive season. He had that one year where he was catching a touchdown every single time he touched it, but still, 20 yards a pop is nothing to scoff at. Your big play guy that stretches the field, his contested catches, a guy like Jordan Love loves to have a guy like that, and losing him in the playoffs is going to be a huge blow. I'm curious how the Packers respond. At 8, we have the Chargers. Ladd McConkey stepped up. He's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. They get a huge win all the way up to the 5 seed. They get a favorable matchup, granted on the road, against the Houston Texans. That's what they wanted. Justin Herbert's going to need to prove he can perform in the playoffs. I believe in Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback, but taking a look at the rest of these roster, it's very young, unproven. Jim Harbaugh has done an excellent job turning this team from a 5-win team all the way to an 11-win team this season. That is incredibly impressive for what they've done. Chargers at number 8. 7, we have the Commanders. Terry McLaurin sets the all-time franchise record for touchdowns in a single season with this game-winning catch, mossing Deron Bland in the corner of the end zone. They weren't able to get a lot of offense going with Jaden Daniels. Marcus Mariota comes in, provides a spark. This is a very young team. I don't know if this is their year, but they have been incredibly impressive. They have impressed me in every possible way, and Jaden Daniels is your rookie of the year. The Minnesota Vikings at 6. I was very disappointed by the way they played against the Lions. And I know it was the Lions, but this has been my big concern with this Vikings team all season long. We saw Sam Darnold kind of get shell-shocked, right? He was missing these throws that he had not missed all season. That was a real playoff atmosphere. He hadn't had to deal with that all season long. And as we get into the playoffs, those atmospheres, especially in an NFC where the lowest amount of wins in that playoffs is 10 games. They're going into the Rams, a Rams team that, while they only have 10 wins, is 9-3 over their last 12, right? They started 1-4 ever since they got healthy. They have been really, really hard to stop. It's going to be a tough game. This defense for the Vikings is really, really good, but Sam Darnold needs to be able to hit those open receivers, something he was failing to do at the end of that really all Sunday Night Football long in one of the biggest games of the year. At 5, we have the Ravens. They find their way back into the top 5, and they're playing their best football right now, right? This is an incredibly dangerous team. The defense is starting to figure it out, and that was one of their big weaknesses. Derrick Henry. He's doing Derrick Henry things, setting records, doing everything he possibly could think of. Lamar Jackson playing at an MVP caliber level, right? This is a Baltimore Ravens team that is hungry for a Super Bowl. They were oh so close last year. I wonder if this is their year. They're going to, again, just like everyone else in the AFC, their goal is to get over the hump, the monkey on all of their backs that is the Kansas City Chiefs, right? The Kansas City Chiefs, they just gave up, right? They didn't play that last game. They finish at 15-2. They're looking to attempt to three-peat. If they do it successfully, it would be the first time in the Super Bowl era that any team has ever done that. Now, they looked atrocious against the Broncos, but that's because everybody that you have heard of on that team was resting. I don't blame them too much for it. It's crazy that they get 23 or 24 days off before their next game. It's going to be a long time, and they need it. Patrick Mahomes dealt with a little bit of that ankle injury. I don't think he was 100%, but they have gotten better and better as time has gone on. In 3 of their last 4 games, aside from the game where they sat everybody, in their last 3 games, they have won by double digits, something they had only done 2 times prior all season long. Everything is starting to click for this team. They're getting very dangerous and very hot at the right time. Getting into the top 3 of Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills here at number 3, they had a great season. MVP potential in Josh Allen. He's probably going to end up winning the award, but this Bills team has really impressed me, right? The defense has been a lot better than I thought it was going to be after siphoning off all the talent that it has. The offense as well also looked a lot better than I thought it was going to after siphoning off the talent. They had 30 rushing touchdowns, 30 passing touchdowns, something no other team in the history of the league has ever done before. That's incredibly impressive. This is a very dangerous team, and much like the Ravens, they're looking to get that Chiefs monkey off of their back. That's how we'll know if it's a successful year for either of them. At 2, it's the Eagles. I want to believe in this Eagles team, but that guy in the picture right there, Jalen Hurts, still in concussion protocol. If he is still in concussion protocol, we are getting, most likely, Tanner McKee. Not who you want in a playoff game against a really good Packers team. Right? There's no weak spots in the NFC. There's nowhere to hide, even as the 2 seed going up what usually is an easy game against the 7 seed. They need Jalen Hurts back. They could probably survive without him, but I don't know. Saquon's great. That defense is great, but without Jalen Hurts, this team just lacks that extra oomph, that extra confidence that it needs to really be what it can be. And at number 1, it's the Detroit Lions. Even in a game where Jared Goff looked a little uncomfortable, you had a guy in Jahmyr Gibbs who finished with 4 touchdowns. What a day for him on the ground, and he might be getting his running mate back in the backfield in David Montgomery after a long rest. That is huge for them. They obviously love to have that Thunder and Lightning, Sonic and Knuckles duo over there. It's not something that they need because Jahmyr Gibbs has shown he is a premier back in the NFL, but spelling him, letting him be that extra explosive player that he has, that he can be, and giving that your bigger, more compact back, I guess, your power rusher in David Montgomery, a couple of carries at the goal line, spelling him a bit is huge. Take a little wear and tear off his body. The Lions at number 1, they've looked like the best team in the NFL basically all season long, and they could bring a Super Bowl back to Detroit as long as they get healthy. But let me know what you think. Who was the best team in the NFL? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we focus on just the playoff teams. I talked a little bit about it, but there are tiers in the playoffs, right? 14 teams enter. Who are the pretenders? Who are the contenders? We'll talk about all of that next, coming up here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.